Uncover the sinister secret. 7 spine-chilling tales of the cursed, haunted rain. The clouds loomed ominously over Kansas City, an unholy gathering as Sarah stared anxiously at the bills piling on the table. The scent of wet asphalt filled the air, mingling with the distant rumbles of thunder. There was something thick and oppressive about the atmosphere, a foreboding that sent a chill straight to her bones. Once, her neighbors exchanged light-hearted conversations over fences, but today, a heavy silence blanketed the suburb as raindrops began to fall, each one a portent of doom. Jamie dashed upstairs, his laughter ringing through the halls like a haunting melody as he darted towards the children's playground. It shouldn't he be visited, not since that family had vanished without a trace all those years ago. With the storm gaining momentum, Sarah poured herself a cup of coffee, lukewarm yet comforting. But just as she sat down, a loud crash of thunder shook the windows. The familiar faces of her neighbors, now shadowy figures, flitted through her mind, their once amiable smiles twisting into frowns of suspicion. Something felt wrong. Too wrong. She tried to shake off the feeling, but a glance out the window froze her heart. Jamie stood still at the edge of the playground, transfixed. The rain poured down, soaking the ground, and as darkness enveloped him, an unease curled in her stomach. Shadows twisted and writhed around him as they danced to an unheard rhythm. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that is happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The clock ticked on mercilessly. Sarah's heart raced, each second echoing the chaos building within her. The whispers started a cacophony of laughter drifting in through the cracks of her home, grating and sharp like nails on a chalkboard. It wasn't Jamie's laughter, but something darker, feeding off the storm that howled outside. She willed her feet to move, but dread paralyzed her. How could Jamie be drawn to a playground steeped in mystery and fear? She stumbled to the door, gripping the frame as her pulse quickened. The storm outside transformed into a malevolent being, electricity crackling ominously in the air. Then it hit her like a jolt. Jamie was gone. The familiar warmth of their home turned cold, shadows inching closer, creeping around her like a predator awaiting its prey. She dashed downstairs, terror clawing at her throat. No call for her. No assurances. Just an empty house, silence ringing louder than the storm. She bolted to the window, gripping the ledge, peering into the abyss of the playground. The rain blurred her vision, but there, amid the cascading horror, she saw a figure standing beneath the swings, dark and formless, just outside the reach of her understanding. The cold sweat on her brow mirrored the torrential downpour, each raindrop like a heartbeat drumming against her ears. Whatever haunted this neighborhood had awakened to claim its next victim. Time was slipping away. Panic surged through her veins, igniting an instinctual drive to uncover horrors that had long been buried, secrets nude and raw, coiled within the very ground she once called home. Every ghostly echo, every flash of lightning seemed to whisper one truth: Jamie was in danger. Rain pounded, thundering in her ears now, drowning out her cries as she stumbled into the night, ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. Would she find her son before the storm claimed them both? The dark invitation hung heavy in the air, the haunting playground now a dire realm of nightmares that awaited her. In the distance, a blood-curdling scream pierced through. Relentless and chilling. Sarah's heart dropped. The night was just beginning. As Sarah sprinted through the downpour, the rain plastered her hair to her forehead and cold droplets dripped down her spine. Each step felt like a fight against an invisible force trying to pull her back. The playground loomed ahead, an ominous silhouette swaying in the gusty wind, but it was Jamie that consumed her thoughts, urging her to move forward. Jamie! She screamed, her voice swallowed by the storm. Rain lashed against her cheeks, bitter as the fear swelling in her chest. She pushed through the chains of the swinging gate, its rusty hinges creaking like the specters of those who had long since vanished. A sudden flash of lightning illuminated the playground, and for a split second, everything around her transformed. Creaking swings, rustling trees, twisted slides were all alive. The figure beneath the swing seemed to flicker with the light, its form shuddering as if caught in a kaleidoscope of nightmares. Sarah's heart raced. Could that be Jamie? But no, he wasn't there. Only the sinister laugh echoed again, a cruel mockery of the pure delighted giggles that once filled this place. Clenching her fists, Sarah searched frantically, eyes darting through the shadows. Memories stabbed at her, the neighbor's shared stories about the family lost to the dark, swallowed by the secrets hiding under the swings. The wind howled, it felt alive, snickering at her desperation. Another scream, this one cut short, echoed through the thick veil of rain. It burst forth from the depths of the dark, wrenching her gut and sending her pulse racing. Jamie! Panic gripped her as she barreled deeper into the playground, slipping on the mud slicked with rainwater, breath ragged and shallow. Each strike of thunder seemed to punctuate her dread, teasing her with the horrifying possibility that she'd arrived too late. Then she spotted a flicker of bright yellow in the shadows. It was Jamie's lost raincoat, the one she insisted he wear during storms. Desperation turned to urgency as she lunged forward, her fingers grazing the soaked fabric just as a cold hand gripped her ankle. With a shriek, she whipped around, heart hammering against her ribcage. But there was nothing. Just the hollow echo of her scream layered over the downpour. Sarah's instinct screamed, saying to run. But the vision of Jamie pushed her forward, shaking off her disbelief. She raced toward the swings, eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. And there it was again, a murky silhouette, this time wavering in the corners of her vision. It felt as though the darkness was breathing down her neck, eager to pull her into its depths. "Don't leave me." The words tumbled from her lips, desperate and fractured. The laughter twinkled around her, taunting her fragile grip on reality. Something wet splattered against her cheek, and for a breathless moment, she wondered if the storm itself had begun to cry, tears mingling with the torrential rain. But when she tasted it, blood filled her mouth, metallic and bitter, a warning. Lightning illuminated the figure again, this time closer, a glimpse of hollow eyes and a gaping mouth that seemed to consume the light. Time warped, the storm deepened, and Jamie's name was suddenly lost among the chaos of wind and laughter. She could feel the darkness reaching for her, hungry and malignant. The storm transformed, swirling into a channel of faces, emerging just beyond the edge of the playground. Their mouths moved, chanting her name, urging, beckoning. It was a reminder of lives once lived, cries now lost in the shroud of night. "Run!" A voice screamed, but it wasn't hers. It resonated through the storm, shaking her to the core. In that moment, clarity cut through the dread. Jamie was close. The figures in the mud crawled toward her, twisting with every droplet of rain. "Mommy!" A tiny voice drifted on the wind, fragile yet unmistakable, with fear and determination merging into one raw pulse. Sarah lunged toward the sound. The shadows shrieked, writhing around her in fury as she plunged into the unknown, but would she reach him in time? What terrible truths awaited her in this haunted playground that whispered her name into an endless abyss? The world around Sarah transformed into a blur of rain and shadows, the darkness pressing at her back like a living entity, eager to ensnare her. She stumbled, her feet slipping on the muddy ground, but she could still hear Jamie's voice calling to her, a beacon cut from the storm. "Mommy!" His cries were growing weaker, fading into the roar of the rain. Panic surged through her. She couldn't let it end here, not like this. "Jamie!" A desperate shout, raw and filled with urgency, clawed its way out of her throat. She pushed herself forward, the rain pelting her face like tiny stones, stinging and relentless. Every step she took felt like a journey through a thick fog, each breath an effort against the suffocating weight of dread looming around her. Through the murky gloom, Sarah spotted a flicker near the old slide. Was it him? Adrenaline surged through her veins. She sprinted toward it, her heart pounding like thunder in her ears. The shadows twisted and curled, but she refused to look away, to let them distract her. If she lost her focus, she'd lose him. As she reached the slide, she was met with an overwhelming chill. Goosebumps prickled her skin. The laughter so sinister and hollow wrapped around her, making her shiver. She peered into the darkness beneath the slide and felt something cold wash over her, a presence lurking just beyond the edge of her vision. "Jamie." Her voice trembled. "I'm coming." The rain intensified, blurring her vision as she knelt, heart racing. The shadows shifted again, revealing glimpses of twisted faces screaming in agony, mouths wide open but soundless. They seemed to reach for her, begging, but their eyes were hollow sockets, void of life. Suddenly, she heard a tiny whimper that came from the abyss. "Mommy, help!" Sarah's breath caught. There was no time for fear, she had to fight through it. With a fierce determination, she crawled closer, her heart thumping violently in her chest. She could almost taste the electricity of the storm in the air, the unnerving charge that something dreadful lay just out of sight. Then she saw a small hand emerging from the shadows. "Jamie!" She lunged forward, grasping the tiny hand, pulling with all her strength, but her grip felt wrong, cold, clammy, not the warm little fingers she remembered. Panic erupted, sending her racing back, but the shadows dragged her down, their weight like chains around her limbs. She struggled, kicking and thrashing in the muck, her screams choked by the unrelenting rain. The laughter rose in a cacophony, drowned in the storm but still haunting her, ringing with a dreadful clarity. "Let go! Let him go!" She screamed, tears mingling with the rain as she fought against the tide of darkness. Just then, the world erupted in light. A blinding flash of lightning silhouetted the playground, exposing the twisted figures for what they were, lost souls bound to this cursed place. Sarah froze, her breath caught in her throat. In that instant, she spotted Jamie, his bright yellow coat drowned in mud. He was standing by the swings, alone, eyes wide and fear-stricken as he watched her fight against the shadows. "Mommy! Help me!" Sarah's heart shattered. The shadows growled in anger, pulling at her fiercely. In that instant, every instinct in her screamed to break free to save him. But could she? What if the moment she released her grip, they would take him away forever? "Hang on, Jamie. I'm coming." She reached for the shadows, pulling against the current even as they dragged her back. With every ounce of strength, she clawed her way through the fear gripping her heart, focusing on those gleaming eyes, the bright coat against the night. But just as she was about to break free, the laughter rose again, louder and more menacing. It echoed through her very bones, warning her that the moment she let down her guard, something terrible awaited. Would she ever be able to reach him? Would time slip away from her fingers like droplets of rain? As darkness loomed at the edges of her vision, Sarah took one last desperate breath, willing herself to fight through the terror. A chilling thought pierced her mind. What if she wasn't the only one trapped here? With that, she plunged deeper into the shadows. The shadows surged like a wild tide, and for a moment, Sarah felt the crushing weight of despair. The darkness clawed at her, cold fingers wrapping around her limbs, pulling her deeper into its endless void. Every heartbeat thudded in her ears, matching the pulse of fear drumming through her veins. She couldn't think, could barely breathe. "Mommy!" Jamie's voice echoed, but it felt distant, muffled by the storm. Every cry was a dagger in her heart, spurring her onward even as the shadows threatened to envelop her whole. She lunged again, fighting against the grip of terror. Rain lashed around her like 1,000 tiny knives, but she pressed on, mindless of pain. Jamie's small form flickered in the distance, a haunting silhouette, as if the storm itself were playing tricks on her. Was he real? Or were the shadows playing with her mind? "Hold on!" She screamed, her voice raw. She squeezed her eyes shut, hoping to block out the images clawing at her sanity, the wails of lost souls, the twisted faces emerging from the dark edges of her mind. She could almost reach Jamie. Each step took her closer, or so she hoped. Suddenly, she felt an icy breath against the back of her neck. The laughter buckled her knees, pulling her down as she spun around. Shadows formed into shapes, advancing toward her like a pack of hyenas drawn by the scent of fear. There were no discernible features, just mouth stretched wide in silent screams, eyes glistening with malevolent intent, panic clawed at her throat. Instinctively, she reached back, grasping nothing but air. The shadows metamorphosed, becoming darker, thicker, as if they were alive. "Get away from me!" She shrieked, fear igniting a spark of defiance, but they closed in, weaving through her defenses like a serpent through tall grass. A horrible thought struck her. Were these entities trying to keep her from Jamie? "Please, don't take him," she begged. "I want to let you. He's mine." The shadowy figures writhed, and for a second, they hesitated, the air growing thick with an unsettling stillness, and then, unexpectedly, the laughter ceased. Sarah blinked, heart racing. The silence was stifling, deeper than the shadows. She glanced toward Jamie, who still stood frozen by the swings, eyes wide with terror. Had the shadows recognized her will? Just when the devastation threatening to engulf her seemed to retreat, the darkness rebounded. A figure, taller than the rest, stepped closer, its form shifting like smoke. "You bring this one," it whispered, its voice low and sinister, sending chills down her spine. "But can you bear his weight?" "What do you mean?" She gasped, suddenly terrified of what it could do. "Take him, but not without consequence." It laughed, the sound creeping under her skin, wrapping her in fear. "What will you give up to save him?" Time splintered around her. Every moment stretched painfully. Jamie's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, the pleading in them igniting something primal in her. She couldn't abandon him, she wouldn't. "I'll give anything," Sarah shouted, voice trembling. The shadow tilted its head, studying her. "A soul in exchange, a trade. One for the other." The offer hung in the air, thick and potent, unbearable. In that bleak moment, Sarah felt the pressure of the decision crushing her heart. Was she prepared to risk it all? Dread coiled in her stomach as she took a step back. The shadows howled in anticipation, sensing her turmoil, ready to seize on her hesitation. The ground trembled beneath her feet, a reminder that she was running out of time. "Mommy!" Jamie cried again, the connection between them growing fainter as the shadows tightened their grip. The question burned in her mind, what would she sacrifice to pull him from the abyss? And as if sensing her deliberation, the darkness leaned closer, whispering promises laced with deceit. The atmosphere shimmered with ominous potential, ready to consume them both. Would she make the trade? Or would she lose Jamie forever? She took a deep breath, weighing the answer she had not yet discovered. The moment hung in the air, thick with dread, like the stench of decay wrapping around her throat. Who would dare make such a deal? Yet with every shiver down her spine, with every desperate heartbeat, the answer seemed to crystallize. She felt the pull of darkness encircling her, relentless, a vortex urging her to plunge deeper. "Mommy!" Jamie's voice grew weaker, etched with fear that sliced into Sarah's heart. The gales shrieked around her, drowning out her thoughts. She couldn't let him fade. Not now. Not ever. "I'll do it!" she cried, a fire igniting in her pit of despair. The unseen whispers intensified, teasing at her mind, urging her towards an understanding of the cost, one she didn't want to know. Yet she grasped at hope, envisioning the warmth of Jamie in her arms, the sweet giggles that once banished the shadows in their home. The tall figure loomed closer, its smoky tendrils reaching for her. "A life, dear one. A soul is a priceless commodity, one that you possess now. A fate sealed. Yours or his." Time slowed, and fear was a thick fog in her mind. "No." She objected defiantly, shaking her head as if the action could nullify the eldritch proposal. "You can't take what isn't yours." The shadows retreated a fraction, amused by her defiance. "Would you prefer to see him suffer? To watch him squirm? The choice is yours." Jamie was slipping, the distance between them stretching impossibly. Did she dare risk it all for him? Was there another way? But another scream from him burned through her resolve, the tendrils of his terror binding her to him, forcing her to act. "What if I offer you my life instead?" she shouted, heart racing, pulse loud in her ears. The shadows writhed in delight, a distorted confluence of joyful malice. An intriguing offer, but one life for another is not enough. Would you offer your sanity to save him? Sarah recoiled, feeling the icy grip of dread clutching at her heart. Her thoughts swirled her memories, her love for Jamie, every precious moment threatened by the specter of madness. She couldn't lose herself, but the blackened skies above rumbled ominously, as if mocking her turmoil. "Your love cost, dear one. Can you pay it? Take me!" she screamed, unashamed of her desperation. "Just let him go." The shadows undulated, their laughter echoing, filling the air with dread laughter that froze her soul. "Very well," the towering figure relented, the shadows trembling in wicked excitement. "But know that every choice comes with a price. It's chosen." Her heart thundered. The darkness pulled closer, tightening its grip. Within moments, the atmosphere shifted, and she felt the warmth of Jamie flicker like a dying flame. All too soon, the tendrils latched onto her wrist, creeping like ice through her veins, eroding her strength. "Mommy!" Jamie's voice cut through the disintegration of her resolve, cold yet insistent. Time slowed as Sarah met his fearful gaze. She could feel the weight of darkness merging into her very essence, an omnipresent agony engulfing her. "No!" she screamed defiantly, even as she felt pieces of herself slipping away. But did she have the strength to escape? In that last moment of clarity, realization hit her. The shadows weren't merely taking her, they were preparing her for something unspeakable. A legacy written in torment awaited her. Her breath caught in her throat, darkness enveloping her whole, as she realized, this wasn't just a trade. This was an awakening. Sarah's scream echoed into the void as the shadows deepened, a cacophony of impending doom, but was Jamie safe? And what fate awaited her? The answer loomed like a storm on the horizon, terrifying and inevitable. The world morphed as the darkness wrapped around her, a shapeless monster willing to rip apart memories and identity. Sarah gasped, each breath now shallow and suffocated by the weight of her choice. She felt her sanity unraveling, threads of her mind fraying as shadows coiled tighter, whispering her name in tones both soothing and sinister. "Sarah, no, no, no." She wouldn't be seduced by their whispers. Not now, not when Jamie needed her. The shadows encircled her like a vice, but deep within her heart, she felt the flicker of defiance. She thought of her son, how his laughter would pierce these obscured nights. How hard she fought against the terrors that haunted their home, all in vain, but this was different. This was a pact woven in the fabric of despair. "Show me!" she shouted into the dark, desperation fueling her voice. "Show me what I must do to save him." A silent moment passed, stretched thin like the very threads of her existence. Then, from the darkness, a hand, long-fingered and claw-like, extended toward her. It shimmered like flint, cold but sharp, and nausea churned in her stomach as it beckoned. The shadows snapped like dry branches, and the figure leaned closer, its features distorted, taunting her with glimpses of a bleak future. "All souls bear scars from their deals, dear one. Are you ready to bear yours?" Images flashed before her eyes, visions of Jamie, and not the warm, laughing boy she adored, but one twisted and tormented by nightmares. She recoiled, the specter of dread looming large. She couldn't allow that future to unfold. A wave of conviction surged through her. "I'll take the scar," she declared, voice trembling but firm. "Just let him go." The shadowy figure paused, glinting eyes sizing her up as if weighing the tons of untraceable worth she offered. "So be it," it hissed, excitement spilling across the air like poison. "The cost is never simple. Go on, then. Dive into the abyss and discover your truth." Darkness crackled, pulling her down as if the ground itself twisted beneath her. The chill seeped into her bones, dragging her into a realm where echoes of laughter morphed into cries of anguish. Clawing wisps tore at her sanity, whispering secrets of tortured souls that had made similar choices. Jamie's voice pierced through the cacophony, a sharp reminder of hope, vibrant against the surrounding desolation. "Mommy!" She grunted against the surge, unwilling to surrender, the pain a visceral reminder of her humanity. And then, she saw him, a flicker of light against the encroaching shadows. Jamie, framed in a bleak, warped landscape, calling for her. The sight reignited her heart's resolve. She wouldn't let him remain trapped, even if it meant wading through the depths of despair. With renewed vigor, she reached out towards him, stretching across the spectral distance, desperate to close the gap. "I'm coming, Jamie." But the shadows swelled, consuming the light, wrapping tightly around his figure like chains made of void. "The more you struggle, the more costly your choices become," echoed their voices, mocking her resolve. "Please, stop," she pleaded, her words dissolving into desperation. "Let him go. I'll endure whatever pain, just release him." But the shadows paused, curiosity lingering in the air. They coiled around her again, powerful and suffocating. "To save one, must you now break yourself?" they taunted. As she fought, a cold realization gripped her. Behind the shadows, a far more sinister plan lurked. Everything she'd fought against felt like a diversion from the truth. What if saving Jamie meant losing him forever? The darkness pulsed with life, the shadows whispering unknown nightmares into her ears. And in that moment, as her heart thudded against her ribcage, she felt the true weight of her bargain. Would she shatter her own spirit to secure Jamie's safety? Or would the darkness devour them both before she uncovered the truth suffocating them? The cost loomed like a cliff's edge, an inevitable plunge into chaos. Could she brave it? Fear clawed at her, and joy echoed in the distance, but all she could hear was the tempest of voices mocking, hungry, alive. As she prepared for the leap, she glimpsed movement in the dark, shadows shifting in a dance that pulled her closer to madness. What would become of them both? The true horror was just beginning. The world spun wildly around her, colors bleeding into shadows, each twist plunging her deeper into despair. Sarah's breath quickened, her lungs constricting like a noose as she fought to anchor herself amid the chaos. Jamie's voice called out again, a desperate lifeline threaded through the veil of darkness. "Mommy!" She strained against the oppressive force, as if breaking through a thick fog that tried to pull her back into the abyss. The claws of the shadowy figure still tugged at her consciousness, a reminder of the price yet to be paid. "Where are you?" Sarah shouted, her voice echoing back to her in mockery. The shadows flickered and pulsed, alive with malice and intent. They twisted around her, tendrils of darkness that seemed to reach for her very soul. "Let go," they hissed seductively, "you cannot save him." "And no," she stammered, gathering what strength she had left. She thought of Jamie, shivering alone in the clutches of fear. He needed her. But the cacophony heightening around her drowned out reason. Each heartbeat felt like a drum roll announcing an impending doom. Glimpses of other lost souls flitted through the darkness, screaming faces twisted in agony, eyes wide with terror, empty echoes of those who'd come before her. "Join us," they whispered, their voices merging into a haunting lullaby. Sarah shook her head violently. "I will not. I will never join you." The more she fought against it, the tighter the shadows gripped her, an iron vice determined to crush her will. Suddenly, a flicker of light burst forth, illuminating a narrow path leading towards her son. Hope ignited within her. She surged forward, the light guiding her, pushing through the web of pain and despair. The gnarled voices shrieked in frustration, the shadows recoiling slightly, granting her a moment of clarity. "You will pay for this defiance," they spat back. Pushing aside their threats, she stumbled down the path, her eyes trained on Jamie. There he was, trapped inside a swirling void, his figure shrinking more and more with every second. "Mommy!" He reached for her, every limpid cry tearing at her heart. "Hold on, Jamie. I'm coming." Just then, the shadows curled back in, roaring in fury, ready to choke out her light. A sudden jolt of fear coursed through her spine. Was she too late? Her hands thrummed with energy, desperate to extend beyond the intangible wall separating them. "I'll sacrifice anything," she shouted defiantly. "Please, let me take his place." A sudden silence enveloped her, the chaos halting as they considered her words. Slowly, the shadows began to swirl once more, but they hesitated, lingering. "You wish to take the burden from him?" One voice echoed, promising equal parts mockery and intrigue. "Yes, I would do anything." Her heart raced, not just from fear but the sheer gravity of her words. "Just let him go. There must be a way." Laughter erupted around her, a sound that was jagged, cruel, and filled with an uncanny delight. "What will you become, dear Sarah? A puppet to our whims? You cannot imagine the depths of the darkness you'd willingly plunge into to take his suffering. We could twist all that you are." She felt herself faltering, doubt creeping in. What if the shadows were right? What if she lost herself completely? But then she saw Jamie again, his little form struggling, his light fading. "Do it!" she screamed. "Let him go. I'll bear your darkness. I'd rather take 1,000 scars than watch him suffer." With those words, the atmosphere shifted. The shadows surged toward her, filling her with the essence of despair and chaos. An overwhelming rush enveloped her, seeping into her very being. A shrill scream erupted from Jamie, vibrating through the air. The shadows flickered, hesitating at the convulsion of energy, pulling back as Sarah stamped her foot down, solid in her determination. She would not let the darkness win. But as the shadows wove tightly around her body, feeding on her fear and resolve, a chilling realization struck her. The paths of pain and chaos they promised were dark indeed. And in that moment, she grasped the terrible truth. Was she truly strong enough to survive the cost she had offered? Whispers intensified, pressing into her mind with a crushing insistence. "Embrace what lies ahead." With terror coursing through her, Sarah braced herself, heart pounding dangerously as the shadows readied for their embrace. What transformation awaited her in the depths of their sinister hold? And was she prepared to face the revealed horror of what Jamie's salvation would truly demand? A surge of energy burned through Sarah's body, an all-consuming heat as the shadows responded to her desperate plea. She felt them wrap around her limbs, their grips tightening like chains forged from fear itself. Each tendril pressed against her skin, leaving a chilling residue, as if they were taking inventory of her lifeblood. "Mommy!" Jamie's voice echoed once more, a fragile thread of innocence cutting through the thick haze of despair. It pulled at her heart, igniting a fierce resolve amid the encroaching blackness. "Hold on!" she cried, clutching her fists in determination. She drew on everything she had left: the love for her son, the memories that made her who she was, each thought firing like bullets in her mind. But the shadows didn't relent. They laughed again, a sound that was sickening, slipping like oil through her fingers. "You think love will save you?" They coiled around her, their whispers curling in her ears like snakes. "What will it cost you?" A shudder ran down her spine. The darkness felt alive, pulsating and throbbing with malicious glee. The laughter morphed into agonizing wails, the disembodied voices of those who had succumbed before her. "You are not the first to bargain, dear Sarah. But we delight in breaking the strongest. Get away from me!" she screamed, her heart racing. Suddenly, the darkness seemed to pulse, latching onto her fears, dragging her deeper. Shadows converged like an ocean's tide, swallowing her, suffocating her resolve. Then, from within the tumult, a glimmer, a pinprick of light flickered just beyond the veil. Jamie! Her precious boy was fighting, and for him she would fight harder than ever. With a scream that ripped from her gut, she lunged towards the light. "I will save you!" As she moved, the shadows shrieked, a chorus of hatred and rage swirling around. The walls of despair crumbled momentarily, allowing the light to cast a soft glow on her surroundings. Desperate hopes wove through her, threading a cautious path. But the shadows wouldn't simply let her pass. They lashed out, coiling around her legs, pulling her towards them with terrifying strength. She felt their power seep into her veins, planting seeds of doubt and despair. "You're not capable, Sarah. You won't last. You'll become one of us." "No. I won't." She fought against them, but their grip was solid, cold as death. The light flickered along the edges of her peripheral vision, blinding but unreachable. As she stumbled, the air shimmered, shifting to a hazy distortion that breathed life back into her spirit. In that moment, Sarah felt the pulse of ancient magic, the kind that drove a mother's love surging through her. "I am stronger." With every ounce of will, she tore her way through the thickening shadows. Pain throbbed everywhere, burning like fire, but she drew strength from it. "Let him go!" she yelled, her voice echoing against the fragile walls of the void. Suddenly, the shadows faltered, their grip loosening. "You resist, but your pain may yet feed us," one hissed, sliding back momentarily. Inexplicably, the air grew still, the whispers fading into muted echoes. Sarah glimpsed the silver thread connecting her to Jamie. It shimmered, offering her the glimmer of hope she needed. She reached again, stretching her fingers, feeling the warmth growing stronger. But then she felt it, the shadows began twisting deeper within her, siphoning the last droplets of her resolve. Panic clawed at her throat. This isn't over. She gasped, summoning every scrap of power to fuel her fury. Would her defiance be enough to sever the bond of darkness? Or would she succumb to the very shadows she fought against? The boundaries of her soul trembled dangerously, and she stood on the brink of her own surrender. The shadows hissed their promise, relentless in their persistence. They encroached, whispering of an ending she couldn't contemplate. That as the darkness clung tighter, a horrifying realization gnawed at her mind. Her own salvation was now intertwined with an even darker fate. What awaited her beyond this struggle? What choice loomed near, sinister and tempting? And did she have the courage to emerge as something more than she was, or would she be lost forever? The oppressive darkness twisted around Sarah, a living entity that fed on her terror. The shadows grew thicker, urging her to surrender, to lose herself in the embrace of despair. She screamed for Jamie, the sound swallowed by the black void, yet a quiet strength began to rise within her. "Fight!" she commanded herself, each word piercing through the fog like a shard of glass. Despite the shadow's attempt to drown her, she could feel a flicker of warmth in her chest. It reminded her of those sunny afternoons at the park, Jamie giggling, the wind playing with his curls. "Mommy!" His voice threaded through her mind, a lifeline in the engulfing storm. She forced it to be her anchor. "I'm coming." With every ounce of resolve, Sarah began to walk, her steps a defiant rhythm against the consuming fear. The shadows writhed, recoiling from the brightness of her determination. They hissed their displeasure, the sounds slithering into her ears, whispering old tales of despair and hopelessness. "Leave!" she shouted, hands outstretched as if shoving back the encroaching darkness. "You have no power here." But as she stood firm, the shadows retaliated. Tendrils snaked at her ankles and gripped her throat tighter, robbing her breath. Panic surged, her pulse thundered in her ears. Sweat trickled down her spine as icy fingers scraped across her mind, pulling at the tendrils of her memories. "Do you remember your fears, Sarah?" they taunted, each word a venomous bite. "The weight of your failures, the pain you couldn't escape." "Shut up!" She recoiled, stumbling backward, caught off guard. The darkness laughed, a cacophony of despair echoing all around her. It was a haunting melody, drawing her toward memories she wished to bury, the late-night arguments, the sense of inadequacy, losing herself in a world that never made sense. In that moment of weakness, she felt a new wave of shadows surging toward her. They wrapped around her heart like barbed wire, squeezing until it hurt. "You're lost," they whispered, their breath cold and cutting. "You will never find him." Her heart twisted at their words. Jamie was out there, she could almost see him, watching her through a curtain of darkness. She gasped, "I won't give up. I'm not lost." But the shadows thrummed with dark delight at her defiance. They shimmered like liquid night, coiling tighter, drawing her down into memories that shattered her resolve. Just when she thought she would break, a spark ignited. Suddenly, she remembered the stories her grandmother told her. Stories of ancient magic woven into bloodlines, the strength of a mother's love capable of fighting even the fiercest of darkness. The warmth surged again, pulse by pulse. Each recollection ignited a small flame in her. "Remember who you are," she whispered fiercely, pushing against the tide of despair. With every breath, she called forth those memories, transforming them into a weapon. "Jamie!" she cried, her voice fierce and unyielding. "I will find you. I will not succumb." The shadows shrieked, their screech echoing like shattered glass. Light erupted from her hands, illuminating the thickening darkness. She fought, pushing back with every ounce of love she possessed. But even as the light spread, the shadows lashed back, fighting viciously against her. Something deep within her began to crack, a feeling of impending truth lurking just beyond her grasp. What if this light awakened more than just salvation? What will be born from your fight? They hissed, the agony in their tone threading through the air, taunting her. Will you emerge as savior or something worse? As doubts clawed at her, Sarah steadied herself. Would her choice lead to light or darkness? The shadows were relentless, snaking deeper, prodding at the hidden parts of herself she had buried. Each breath felt like a countdown, and she knew a choice was ahead, a reckoning waiting in the shadows. The price of her defiance echoed ominously, vibrating through the very fabric of her being. What kind of power would she wield if she truly tore apart the veil? And, more chillingly, what would she become in the end? The shadows surged like a storm. They bellowed and writhed, eager to consume the light Sarah summoned from the depths of her soul. Darkness clawed at her resolve, snatching at her thoughts and memories with icy fingers. Every moment felt like a delicate balance, a tightrope walk over an unfathomable abyss. "Mommy!" a small voice cried, and in that instant, Sarah remembered why she fought. Jamie's face flickered to life in her mind, bright and innocent, laughing as he toppled off the swing. Tears burned in her eyes as the darkness whispered its vile promises, twisting the air thick with despair. "No!" she cried, pushing back with the flood of love inside her. It roared louder than the shadows, filled with warmth and fierce determination. "You will not take my son." A burst of light shot from her hands, illuminating the pitch black around her. For a heartbeat, the shadows recoiled, their forms swirling in confusion, and in that instant, Sarah leaped forward. She sprinted towards Jamie's flickering figure, reaching out for him through the swirling chaos. "Jump!" she shouted. "I'm here." Jamie's small hand stretched toward her, framed in the chaos, desperate for connection. With every step forward, she felt the shadows tightening their grip around her, snatching at her sanity, trying to drown her in fear. But she focused on the love radiating outward, breaking through the pain and darkness that threatened to pull her under. "Mommy!" Jamie's voice echoed through the veil, urging her on. It was a song threaded with hope, lifting her steps even as the shadows bound her with chains of despair. Each thud of her heart matched the pulse of light growing stronger within her, igniting a fierce resolve she never knew existed. "Hold on!" she cried, channeling every ounce of her strength. "I'm coming for you." But the darkness twisted around her, harder and more insistent, fingers of night reaching for her very essence. It taunted her with visions of future drenched in despair where Jamie would forever remain lost, a hollow echo of what could have been. Would she really be able to save him? Was everything she had sacrificed worth it? In that moment of doubt, she heard it again, the exquisite sound of her son's laughter, vibrant against the encroaching sorrow. "Mommy!" She pushed against the suffocating grip of fear, fighting through the shadows, tears streaming down her face. They wrapped tighter, but she would not be their vessel. With a defiant scream, Sarah broke through the veil, igniting her spirit until energy sparked at her fingertips. With every ounce of will, she reached Jamie just as he slipped further into the void. She grasped his small hand, feeling the warmth of his body pulling her closer. In a blinding flash, the darkness screamed in fury as the light surged all around them, swallowing the shadows whole. Suddenly, it stopped. The cacophony quieted, leaving an eerie stillness in its wake. The ground below them trembled, and the oppressive weight of despair faded. They stood together now, enveloped in a golden aura that pulsed with love and defiance. Jamie blinked up at her, eyes wide, filled with relief and wonder. "Mommy," he said softly, voice trembling with the last remnants of fear. "You came for me." "Yes," Sarah whispered, pulling him tightly into her embrace. Relief washed over her like warm sunlight chasing away the night. The shadows shrank back, whimpering as the light enveloped Jamie, pushing them further away. But then a chilling voice echoed around them, dark and curling like smoke. "You may have saved him, but now you must face your true self, dear Sarah. What light takes, the darkness demands." She flinched but would not break, holding Jamie close. "I'll bear it all," she declared fiercely, heart pounding. "I want to let this darkness take us. We will stay together." "Together," Jamie echoed, small arms wrapping tightly around her waist. The shadows hissed, and with each breath, Sarah felt the darkness pull at her heart, demanding to be fed. But she stood unmoving, anchored by the love she shared with Jamie. In that moment, she realized she wouldn't just face it for him, she'd face it for herself, reclaiming her lost strength. "Let us go," she urged, taking Jamie's hand, a firm grip filled with purpose. The light swelled around them, eroding the shadows, little by little. The playground, once a hill of nightmares, began to morph into a safe haven, each swing basking in the glow of protection. With surging confidence, they walked forward, step by step, each footfall claiming their power against the darkness. The shadows howled as they retreated deeper, their whispers dying down into echoes of a forgotten past. The storm finally broke, rain falling softly around them like a gentle embrace. The weight of despair lifted, and as they made their way through the remnants of the haunted playground, Sarah felt for the first time truly free. Together, they stepped out of the darkness, hand in hand, into the bright light beginning to break through the clouds. Sarah swore she could hear the soft laughter of the departed souls, not angry but thanking her for freeing them from their shackles. The future unfolded before them, a blank canvas worthy of their hopes, painted with love only they could provide. "Mommy, are we safe now?" Jamie asked softly, looking up at her with eyes that sparkled like the stars. "Yes," Sarah said, her heart swelling with a fierce joy. "We're safe." And as they walked into the sunlit horizon, arms intertwined, a bond stronger than darkness held them together, roots of love grounding them against any storm that dared to rise again. Now it's time for you, dear viewer. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will take you on unforgettable journeys. Smash that like button now to let us know you enjoyed this thrilling conclusion. It feeds the algorithm and helps others find this journey. Flood the comment section with your reactions and your theories about this ending. We want to hear your thoughts, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and experience the adventure, the thrill, the heart. What are you waiting for? This is the moment to show your support.